arms limitation agreement that Congress had enacted, and by a stroke of fate, Sloan had been named the technical officer in charge of conducting the test. Within a year, he'd be a captain, or he'd be in Portsmouth Naval Prison. He looked at Hennings again. What was in this for him? Sloan knew that he could have backed out at any time by asking for shore leave. But those old men in the Pentagon had done their homework well when they studied his personnel file. They knew a gambler when they saw one. A small stream of perspiration ran down Sloan's neck, and he hoped Hennings hadn't noticed it. Approximately 10 minutes, Admiral. He punched a button on the console, and a digital countdown clock began to run. Sloan had an inordinate fascination mixed with phobia for countdown procedures. He watched the digital display running down. He used the time to examine his motives and strengthen his resolve. To rationalize. The updated Phoenix was a crucial weapon to have in the event of war, even though the idiots in Congress were acting as if there would never be any more wars. One discrete test of this missile would tell the Joint Chiefs if it would work under combat conditions, if the increased maneuverability would mean that the kill ratio of this newest weapon could be nearly 100%. The Navy brass would then know what they had, and the politicians could go on jawing and pretending. American air power would have an unpublicized edge, no matter what happened in the future. Russia could go back to being the Soviet Union, and the Cold War could refreeze. U.S. combat forces would have something extra. And with modern technology, a slight edge was all you could ever hope for. All you ever needed, really. There was also the matter of the Navy finding its balls again after countless years of humiliation at the hands of the politicians, the gays, and the feminists. 9 minutes. Commander Sloan poured a cup of coffee from a metal galley pitcher. He glanced at Hennings. The man was looking uncomfortable. He could see it in his eyes, as he had seen it several times the day before. Did Hennings know something that he didn't? Sloan walked to the far end of the console and looked at the gauges. But his thoughts were on Hennings now. Hennings seemed to be almost uninterested in the testing. Uninterested in Sloan, too, which was unusual since Sloan was certain that Hennings was to make an oral evaluation report on him. Sloan felt that almost forgotten ensign's paranoia creeping over him and shook it off quickly. A seasoned officer turns everything to his advantage. He would turn Hennings's detachment to his advantage if necessary. Hennings stood suddenly and moved nearer to Sloan. He spoke in a low voice. Commander, will the data be ready as soon as the testing is complete? Will you need to do anything else? Sloan nodded. Just a few qualitative forms. He tapped his fingers on a stack of paperwork on the console desk. 30 minutes or so. Hennings nodded. The room was silent except for the ambient sounds of electronics. Randolph Hennings let his eyes wander absently over the equipment in the tight room. The functions of this equipment were not entirely a mystery to him. He recognized some of it and guessed at what looked vaguely familiar, as a man might do who had been asleep for 100 years and had awakened in the 21st century. When he was a younger man, he had asked many questions of his shipboard technicians and officers. But as the years passed, the meaning of those young men's answers eluded him more each time. He was, he reminded himself, a product of another civilization. He had been born during the Great Depression. His older brother had died of a simple foot infection. He remembered firsthand a great deal about World War II, the Nazis and the Japs, listening to the bulletins as they came across the radio in their living room. He recalled vividly the day that FDR died. Hiroshima, Nagasaki, the day the Japanese surrendered, the day as a teenager that he saw a television screen for the first time. He remembered the family car, a big old round-bodied Buick, and how his mother had never learned to drive it. They'd come an incredibly long way in a short span of time. Many people had chosen not to go along on that fast ride. Others had become the helmsmen and navigators. Then there were people like himself who found they were in positions of command without understanding what those helmsmen and navigators were doing, where they were going.